Bail brawl. A little over a month ago, a new set of reforms to the state's Bail Act promised to streamline decision-making for the court. But it wasn't long before a series of controversial bail outcomes had drawn the attention of media commentators. Then, last Friday, the state premier quietly announced an independent review of the new laws. Critics have labelled that a knee-jerk reaction and say the review is premature. The law and order brawl comes as the state's prison population has climbed to a record high.
The president of the Comancheros bikie gang has been granted bail under the state's amended laws. Mick Howie has been behind bars for 5 years following the fatal bikie brawl at Sydney Airport.
Mick Howie is the second accused killer to be freed under the amended Bail Act. A week ago, Steve Fieses was granted bail after being charged with the murder of his wife, whose body was found dumped near Wollongong in 1997. When the new bail law came into effect 6 weeks ago, it had bipartisan support, but it wasn't long before punches were flying again in the law and order debate.
Until victims feel safe, victims will tell you that they're not satisfied with the new act.
And as the decisions from the new Bail Act began to play out in the courts, the tabloid press and talkback radio hosts began laying in to an old punching bag.
I'd rather not talk about the new bail laws in New South Wales every day, but every day there's an example of just how they've turned the world completely upside down. This lame-brained Attorney-General, and I use the term advisedly, Brad Hazzard says, in the...
Once again, the Parliament and the courts were the target of bruising rhetoric.
$700,000 bought him a get-out-of-jail-free card. Now, here's a warning to you, Mike Baird. As I've said to you a number of times, you lose the law and order debate, you lose everyone.
And the Premier, it seems, was reacting to the mounting headlines.
The Premier, Mike Baird, has announced a review of the state's new bail laws only a month after they came into effect.
It's a rather cynical attempt to ameliorate concerns being raised by some sections of the media.
The Bail Act has undergone a myriad of changes since it was first introduced in 1978. Some of the most substantial were made in 2007 by the then Attorney-General, John Hatzisteros.
New South Wales now has the toughest bail laws in Australia.
But the Act was reworked after a lengthy examination by the Law Reform Commission.
To have enough cases to go through the system, it would be at least 6 months, and I would think maybe 12 months before we can see whether it's working.
One of the reforms that was targeted was presumptions governing bail.
There are no longer any presumptions against bail being granted in matters. The touchstone of this legislation is there an unacceptable risk, and in considering whether there's an unacceptable risk, look to a number of factors: the criminal history of the accused, the propensity to violence of the accused, the potential that the accused may come into contact with the victim.
The New South Wales Law Society had opposed the old legislation on the basis it was unfair.
There's a lot of presumptions under the old Act where, depending on what you were charged with, whether you would be granted bail. So under the new Act, there are no presumptions, and the court looks at the safety to the community.
But some victims groups aren't feeling so safe.
Most of my victims are saying this new act is just rubbish and we need to completely get rid of it.
Howard Brown from the victim support group Vocal is worried the community is lacking confidence.
When people see an unsavoury character being granted bail, they are concerned because they know that there is a prospect that A, the person will not turn up, and B, that there may be some attempt to close down victims and witnesses. That's not a great system to have.
Nobody will get bail under this legislation if the court forms the view that they are an unacceptable risk and that there are no conditions that can be placed upon them that would ameliorate that risk.
The independent review will be led by the former Attorney-General John Hatzisteros. He's famous for a tough-on-crime approach while in government.
Over the last few years, we've cracked down on repeat offenders, people who habitually come before our courts time and time again.
There is a view that he may have a preconceived view as to the way in which the Bail Act ought to operate. Now, the only criticism I have of John's appointment is this: he is not best placed to conduct this review within a matter of weeks. And certainly he is not a better informed person than the Independent Bail Monitoring Group. They should be doing this.
Mr Hatzisteros is a very experienced lawyer and obviously has the expertise of being an Attorney-General. He's well regarded on most sides of politics anyway, or both sides, and in most areas of both sides. And I consider that he, and Mike Baird obviously considers that he will do a good job, but he'll be working with us.
Today, and another headline in the tabloid press over a bail decision fuelled the fire once more. As the political debate rages, the government says the time is right for an independent assessment.
The review is certainly based on our concern that there are a couple of cases particularly where we just want to look at why those particular decisions were made.
So this is a knee-jerk reaction then?
It's a sensible review of legislation as it's coming into play.
It's premature though, isn't it?
From our point of view, from my point of view as the Attorney General, I'm quite comfortable with implementing a review at this point.
This week, the brawl moved on to the state's growing prison population and the record number of inmates.
Numbers of prisoners had dropped to about 9,000 prisoners a few years ago. It's now rising, it's up to about 11,000 and it's predicted to rise to 15,000 prisoners by 2016.
This is a really rapid increase and it's going to impose great problems for the state as a whole, simply because you can't build prisons fast enough at the moment to deal with the incoming prisoners.
And victims groups have growing concerns about links between overcrowding and the court system.
What you will see happen is that it will become a reason provided by accused legal representatives as to why a person should be granted bail. And that should never be one of the reasons put forward as to why a person should be released on bail. It should come down completely to what the new Act says. It's all about risk assessment and ensuring that the public is safe.